What's going on, guys? I'll make this as quick as possible so we can get to the fun. I'm recording this about a week after the footage for the episode you're about to see. I recently monetized the channel out of curiosity and for a few other reasons. And the most recent uploads have all been getting flagged for what I assumed was for profanity. But as you'll see in this upcoming episode, we bleeped not only all the profanity, but any word we thought was even remotely sus enough to trip out any logarithms or whatever. It's under review right now. We'll see what happens. Look, this is effectively a self-help channel. It's about finding better ways and better days in the face of some of the adversity life has thrown some of us, things like addiction, mental illness, and past trauma, stuff like that. If, for some reason, they keep flagging these videos even after removing the profanity, I may have to turn to you guys once again. I'm thinking maybe Patreon. There's a few other things I'm considering as well. In the meantime, if you want to help this thing out, if you want to support the channel and the team and the whole phenomenon, go to the link below. It's the NODCAST and Team No Head in the Oven merch page. Guys, it helps. It really helps. I just wanted to say, look, some of the stories we tell, some of the topics I trade in, and anecdotes I share and stuff like that, sure, they're ugly, but they're to a greater point. They're not to titillate. They're not to shock. They're to show just how I navigated some of the things that many of us are grappling with. So that's all I wanted to say, and I also want to let you know why this was taking so long. Let's get to it. Let's get to the fun. My love to you all. Let's effing go.
What I got to do to find a better way to make it? There's got to be a better way than live like this. I was waiting for a better way and waiting for a better day. I waited so long that I was waiting, I was hating, I was pleading, I was bleeding, I was praying for something that never came. But this came. Thank you all.
Check, check. We rolling? We are rolling. Hello there, fellow dudes, damsels, dandies, and dashing dastards with a deranged, demonic desire for delirious, delicious, daring do like this deviant dilettante right effing here, like all you deviant dilettantes out effing there. Welcome to another installment of Rob Lynn's, a.k.a. Rob from Nod's Nodcast. Here we go. We had a blast last time. Everybody seemed to have a lot of fun with it. I debuted a new skit called The Hardcore Hall of Lame, in which I listed a bunch of trends, fashions, and faux pas from the history of hardcore that drove me nuts. Well, we're going to do it again, because that is a well that will never run dry. Perhaps I've finally found my niche, my biotope, as the French call it, because I'll never run out of to talk on some of the foolishness I've seen in hardcore since I started doing this thing so many years ago. I'm not going to tell you how many years ago, but before we get to that, and I'm going to include myself, I'm going to induct myself into the Hall of Lame this week. Last week I talked about the hardcore strawman. We'll get to all this in a second, but I had a strawman, and I'll give you some time to see if you can guess who it was, who and what it was. What was Rob's hardcore strawman from back in the day? Give you some time to think about it, because I'm going to induct myself, because I got to call myself on my own. It's all not, it's I got to hold, walk my own talk. Say what you be what you say, all that kind of crap. Here we go. Next, merch. Thank you all for jumping on the merch. Bunch of people that I hadn't seen ever comment before jumped on, said, music meant a lot to me, and I did go buy a shirt. Thank you. If you can continue to do that, that'd be effing great. I needed the boost. I still need the boost. The money, yeah, I'm ambivalent about the money. But it is the one source where you can support this where I'll actually see something from it. That's any other sources, you go out and buy shirts or anything like that, I ain't ever going to see nothing from it. That's like the one place you can actually support this thing. So thank you all. If you could continue to do so, links down below. And I'll be swapping out some of that merch, so get the old designs while you can. And there's new designs coming and all that happy crappy. The April 2nd thing is still on. Going to do an acoustic show in Philly, or an acoustic set at a hardcore show. See how that goes. And then I'm doing a spoken word teen gathering the next day on April 2nd. And we'll have details and flyers and crap like that real soon. So let's wrap up a few things from last week before we get back into the Hall of Lame. Hardcore shame. 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 Cersei running naked. I'll get nude for this thing. So a couple of things I want to wrap up real quick from last week's episode. A couple of loose ends I wanted to tie up. First of all, I want to talk about, I had spoken about it the week before last week's Hall of Lame debut. I had talked about what a good time I had on This Is Hardcore with Joe Hardcore, his podcast. But last week, I had just talked about how, boring I find the whole band history type thing, which I do. That's why I just didn't think anybody would get anything out of that. But Joe did a great job. I didn't, nobody thought that I implied that. I'm just covering myself here, putting a little fig leaf, because I had a great time with Joe, and he did it really interesting. I had told him afterwards, I said, if you would come right at me about how I felt about music, it would have been a real bitter, sneering sort of episode. But Joe started with personal history, childhood history and stuff like that, going way back. And it brought me into the whole topic obliquely and kept me interested. I had a great time. It's just that in the aggregate, I don't find that kind of, and then we did this, and then we signed to this, and then we put out this album. Like, I find that kind of stuff really boring. But Joe made it as interesting as it possibly could for me. I was engaged. Second thing, as far as guitar players that won't stop playing while you're talking and who can't do two things at once, they try, I talked about guitar trying to be cool and nonchalant. They can't do it. I thought of two exceptions to that rule. One was Craig Silverman. He played with Blood for Blood back around 2010, 2011, or whenever that was. Slapshot, Agnostic Front, Only Living Witness. The guy gets around. Craig's one of the few guitar players I've ever met who truly can carry on a conversation while playing. Now, he did play all the time, and that did, in a general oblique, it did annoy me a little bit, but he could pay attention. That guy could probably play guitar and drive his car at the same time. That dude, he could play and, concentrate on other things as well. The other exception was Jason Ike from Ramallah. Jason. That dude is the most 1 percentile guitar player I've ever encountered in my life. Not only is he one of the most formidable musicians I've ever worked with and producers, but he's also a 1 percentile guitar player. That dude is scary virtuoso just on the instrument. And you normally don't see those different types of talents come together in one person. Normally those like really lethal shredder type guitar players, they're usually only good at one thing. Jason isn't. He can do like 1 percentile death metal, but he can also play all other kinds of styles as well. But often when somebody's a virtuoso like that, they don't have any songwriting ability, and they're not good on stage, and they're not like a producer. They're not people usually have like one little niche. Jason's one of the most versatile musicians I ever met. Thing about Jason is, though, he never played while anybody was talking, because while I was working with him, he was the guy in the band that performed the role of keeping everybody up to snuff. So he was the guy being annoyed by other people playing while he was talking. But he definitely could do it. Jason can literally track and play guitar at the same time. He will do his own punches, pop, 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 pop. So those are two exceptions I thought of. And let's get to Biohazard. I fired a few shots, laid a few torpedoes into Evan on last week's thing. It was all in good fun. Granted, the stuff that I commented on used to annoy the out of me. But I did want to say, look, I loved Biohazard, okay? They had and I also thought of something too. They were actually the first real hardcore show. I had said on Joe's episode that I think it was the Grind Crusher was my first real show at Nausea and Godflesh. I forgot that it was actually Biohazard. It was before they even released the Maze album. Oh no, that was my second show. Okay, so my second show was Biohazard. Jeez, sorry, I'm screwing up here. The first show was the Grind Crusher or whatever, the New Titans on the Block, whatever the hell it was. The second one was Biohazard with Sub-Zero and Enrage from New York. And Biohazard was awesome. Years later, when Billy went out in my place in Blood for Blood, I was like totally honored. And I also thought it was really slick that the band thought of getting him to replace me. Like the 14-year-old in me was like, oh, dude, if you told me someday that I was going to do a band that Billy from Biohazard replaced, filled in for me, I would have been over the moon. Like this is the thing. We all loved Biohazard back in the day, okay? There's been this like giant scene revision where everybody tries to like Soviet revision, how much they love Biohazard. Like, oh, I remember them. Yeah, yeah. Nah, you don't just remember them. I can see the little Biohazard logo peeking up, tattoo peeking up from around your neck there. You loved them as much as I did. Everybody that was in hardcore at that time, Biohazard was the effing band. I think in the first Converge 7-inch, the one with gravel on it, somebody was wearing a Biohazard shirt. Everybody loved Biohazard. They were incredible. And it's sometimes when you really, and I still listen to them. I just did like a 12-mile walk. I listened to the first album, dun 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 dun. My father taught me many things. I just listened to about half that album while walking today. They were a phenomenon. You could define hardcore pre and post, but that was part of the reason they got on my nerves when Evan started turning into this goofy cartoon caricature of pop culture at the time. And you know, someday I'll get into why the gangsta thing, the paper gangsta thing, the whole like entombed with guns all of a sudden gets on my nerves. But the short version is, for some people, that is an inescapable reality of their lives. And it's a matter of life and death. And there's nothing cute about it. And it's not a jacket that you can just put on and take off. Well, I'm feeling a little gangster today. Oh, wear some clothes and act like a boob. It's a tragedy playing out in tons of American, bad neighborhoods around America. It's an inescapable reality for a lot of people. And and for the people involved, whether they're about that life or not, it's a matter of life and death. It's not a costume you can put on. And the worst thing is, when it was infecting pop culture at that time, these people weren't even imitating actual gang. They were imitating a Hollywood version of something that's an inescapable matter of life and death for too many people. So I always found that shit disgusting. So I've shown some love to Biohazard, because I did. I loved them. I still love their music. But I remember the day I was like 13 or 14 when I was like, okay, I still went to shows. I still went to see them. I still listened to the music. But everything changed the day that they came out and brought a birthday cake and sang happy birthday to Riki Rachtman on the Headbangers Ball. That was the most disgusting, goofy, silly, lame-o thing I've ever seen in my life. Not because they just brought a birthday cake to Riki Rachtman, which would be lame enough, but they like gangsta up the happy birthday to you, yo, Ricky, what's up? And they're like happy, like doing like yo, like, you know, happy birthday to you, what's up, yeah, boy. It was the lamest thing ever. I literally got like tears in my eyes, and then I vomited into my mouth. And I tell you how far I took it. This is how serious they were to me. I felt betrayed. That's why I was hurt. They hurt me. I had a crossbow in my room, and I took the cassette tapes right after seeing that and broke them with the crossbow. I put them on the target and busted up Urban Discipline and the other one, the Maze record. You broke my heart, guys. You broke my heart, Fredo. That was the kind of goofy crap that I just couldn't. It was so caricature. It was like, oh God, give me a break. And Riki Rachtman, that was what he was going through his gangster phase. He suddenly had the yellow frosted hair and tattoos, and he's wearing Carhartts and the 90s. The 90s. Let's face it. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back. And we're going to do the Hall of Lame Part 2. A couple of other topics, new topics, and I'm going to induct myself. Who was my hardcore straw man? Find out in a second. See you in a second, guys. Lame. 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 Check. All right, we are back. So I searched around. Can I do this right for a change? I searched around. That's annoying me too. It's like backwards. It's like reversed. For that footage, the Riki Rachtman birthday cake. I couldn't find it anywhere. And they got like archives of that Headbangers Ball crap. Like you can basically find any skit. So I'm going to put myself in Biohazard shoes. I bet they hired a guy to be online all day searching just for Biohazard Riki Rachtman birthday cake, Biohazard Riki, so they could pull it immediately, because I wouldn't want that out there either. But I couldn't find it. I was going to put a little spliced in clip, but hopefully we'll put another funny little clip in, because I got another idea. We'll see if we can do it. It might be beyond the NODCAST's technical capabilities, which means my gal Brianna, because she's doing all this fun stuff. The little edits like that. All right. I got off topic there for a second, but I really wanted to find that birthday thing. I couldn't, so maybe we'll put something else in. So we're back with part 2 of the Hall of Lame. Rob from Nods, Rob Lynn's Hall of Lame. History of the goofiest, silliest, cringiest trends and foolish fashion faux pas that the core has ever, embarrassed itself with. And like I said, this is a topic that I can mine forever. I mean, if I ever, in fact, the only thing I'm debating right now is whether I'm going to do 2 installments this week or 3. And the third one, the one that I might yank, I don't know if it'll be first, second, or third. The only reason I might not get into it is simply because I want to do it real justice. And it's the big pants phase. That's the topic. Well, am I going to get into it right now or not? I'm not really sure. The big pants phase. It's a somewhat convoluted one, because I knew tons of people that wore those big pants. I think they were called like Jankums or something like that, Jankos or something like that, Jank pants. It was like a skater thing, and I knew plenty of people that wore wore big pants at one point or another. So it's not the pants themselves that offended me or that I remember with like distaste and contempt. I may have worn. No, I never did. The Charlestown in me would not allow me to wear something akin to bell bottoms. I remember the point isn't the pants. The point is the phenomenon that Seth Putnam referred to in, I'm going to have to bleep it, AC lyrics, big pants, bigger loser. Well, I'd adjust that a little bit and call it bigger pants, even bigger loser, because my problem with the big pants was not the fashion itself. I know it was a skater thing. It was like to like leave your feet free or something, or your like your lower extremities to give you some, I don't know. I tried skating once, fell on my back with 2 2-liters and they both popped, and it looked like I was shooting down the street on my back with soda firing me down. It was on bottom of Sullivan Street in Charlestown. But big pants thing turned into an arms race of big pantsitude that got ridiculous. And it also, it was like we used to call a certain style of hardcore, it's big pants hardcore, like big pants hardcore. So like I said, there was I guess I'm getting into it. I guess I'm getting into the topic, right? So here we go. Inductee number 1, big Hall of Fame, Hall of Lame, inductee number 1, or an entry or an award or whatever you want to call it. Big pants, bigger loser, even bigger pants, even bigger loser. There were certain, I'll put it this way. I knew people that wore big pants, didn't bug me. It was just a thing back then. But like I said, there became this arms race, because in all things that are distasteful and grotesque, a la fashion, like Oscar Wilde said, fashion's so disgusting it has to reinvent itself entirely every 6 months, something like that. He said something like that. There's always somebody that's got to take any trend or fad like that further and further and further. And I remember that it was, there were certain shows. I remember, I'm kind of losing the thread here. If I saw too many people of a certain kind at a show, I knew it was a band I wasn't going to be into. I'll explain it this way. The reason I never listened to Quicksand, okay? They were huge. They were another band in the 90s that you could define hardcore pre and post. I don't even know what they sound like to this day. In fact, after this, I'll check them out. I'll check them out. I have no problem with them. The little bits, snatches I've heard here and there weren't bad. I just never heard them because I hated the sight of their audience. And that was the big pants thing. I remember we had somebody come try out for Blood when we went through this brief phase where we were going to try to do 2 guitar players. This is before we all understood that it wasn't me that was the weak musician within the band. And the guy that came in was one of those big pants people, huge pants, huge. And he had a bunch of effects pedals, and his guitar sound was like super washy and had all like kind of fuzzy effects on it. And it was really like scooped and trebly and like flimsy and washy. And he let stuff ring. Like it was like lots of loose chord noises and stuff, but it wasn't deliberate. It was just like bad playing, masquerading as like artsy or something like that. And he was like, his head was shaved. His pants were like flared out at the bottom. So he looked like 2 giant bells. Like his shirt was all flared out and then his pants were all flared out. And he did that thing that all those goofy big pants bands did at the time. When he played, he did like the side to side. I'll splice in some video of me doing it. They did it with the dancing too. It was the backpack kids with the huge pants and the kinda Rasta hat, but it wasn't with the colors. It was like the knit hats, like right down to the eyes or even further, like so the person couldn't see. And they'd have their backpacks on. I'll do the dance and maybe splice something in. And they'd start bobbing side to side, doing that arm thing. And the bands did that on stage. He was one of those. The minute he started playing, which was crazy because our music was like, he's trying to do the. So I just wrote if I came to a show and I saw a bunch of those people up front doing this thing, I just immediately didn't listen to the band. I would just walk out and be like, oh, it's those people. I don't like those people. And my first experience with any of them, even before the guitar, and I remember the guy that came into trial for Blood, he had a huge, giant nose ring, like one of those barbells. So it like came in like, it was like a bull, like Ferdinand the Bull with the big ring, but it was ended in the barbells. And the thing was so huge, it like blocked his nostrils. I was like, how do you even know if you smell bad, bro? How do you even know if you need to take a shower with that thing blocking your nose? And I remember too, the minute I realized I don't like this dude, is he's like, so you guys hear the new Quicksand? This is the guitar guy trying out for Blood with his nose ring and his bell bottom and bell shirt pants and that like hop to side thing. He's like, you guys hear the new Quicksand? And we were like, oh, like you hear the record or something, you going to see him or something like that. We were like, oh no, who are they? The guy's like, you haven't heard, you don't listen to Quicksand? We're like, well, we just haven't heard of them. Like, who are they? Like, are they good? And he's like, what are you guys into? And we were like, oh, well, we're into like Madball, Sheer Terror, Sick of It All. And the dude was like, oh, that stuff just puts me to sleep. And we all just like darted eyes to each other. And afterwards, the dude that tried out said to the guy from Blood at the time, it was actually Jeremy from Diecast. He was the original bass player for Blood. And I could tell the story about that. The band kicked him out and I was overruled. I voted on keeping Jeremy in, and the band voted him out. They didn't want him in there. And when we came to tell Jeremy that he was out, the other guys wouldn't say nothing. And I had to be the one to tell Jeremy he was fired, basically. And I wasn't even the one that wanted him fired. I don't even want to get into the politics. It was a political reason. There was another bass player that somebody in the band had eyes on because they perceived him to have some scene cachet. He turned out to be the biggest nerd I've ever known in my entire life. The guy that replaced Jeremy. So, but I just remember that to this day. But that I was the one that had to tell Jeremy, you're out. And I was the one that didn't want him gone. And afterwards I said to the guys, I was like, from here on in, anybody's getting fired. You guys are doing it. I ain't doing it. And the next time we had to get rid of somebody, they showed up at my house and tried to get me to go. And I was like, nope, I did Jeremy and I didn't want to. You can go deal with this one. And they did. Man, that was a side topic. This is already 10 minutes. So anyway, afterwards, the dude was like, we immediately, the minute the dude left, we were like, yeah, we didn't work with him. And the dude said to Jeremy in the car, I lost the gig when I said about Sick of It All and Madball, right? And Jeremy was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, that's what this band is like about. At the time, that's what we were about. So when I would see that stuff, I would immediately be like, all right, this ain't my scene. And I remember I ran into a kid that I went to early high school with, hadn't seen him in a while. I was maybe like 16 or 17, just starting to go to shows heavily. And he's in this band called Nevertheless. And I ran into him at Sullivan Square, and I'm like, oh, what you doing? He's like, oh, I was just practicing with my band. And his band was there, and they were all like big pants people. And he's like, we're playing on Sunday. You should come see us. They were playing with a band called Arise. And I'm like, you're playing a show? Oh, my God, that's incredible. Like, I thought that was like total rock star. I was a total rube at this point. I was going back to my house in the projects, walking from Sullivan Square. And I looked around at the guys. I'm like, this is hardcore? These guys are hardcore? Because they were like big pants, matador nose bull people. And they were talking about like, there's this great new vegan recipe that you guys need to try out. And I was like, what are they it was like they were speaking like a foreign language. So I went down to the show, and it was all those people in the crowd doing the arm thing, the stagger step arm swim thing. And the music, it was nothing I wanted anything to do with. So basically, in the aggregate, I wrote off Big Pants forever after that. Not Big Pants people, but if I saw a collection of them together, I knew that whatever they were listening to, then I wanted nothing to do with it. And that may have denied me some good music, because from all I've heard, Quicksand was I just never listened to them, because when I would see that group of those people, I'd be like, I'm not interested in whatever that is. I don't even need to know. And I remember the tipping point. I was at some show at the Middle East, and the Big Pants were getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And there was finally this kid that they was so big. I'm going to draw a picture and put it up here. Lame. So they were so big, they looked like a Victorian hoop skirt, like from a lady that wore a whalebone corset, and décolleté or décollage or whatever they're called, with the boobies popped up, wasp waist, and the big hoop skirts from like the Victorian era. The dude looked like that. I'm like, there has to be a superstructure. His pants were so flared out, he could have hidden like 5 Tyrion Lannisters under his pants. I was like, this has just gotten stupid. And it did. It got that stupid. I was like, this is the tipping point. I'm now actively hostile to this big pants thing. So I would then, from there on in, judge people by how big their big pants were. Under a certain caliber of big pant, I would be like, all right, I can talk to this dude. If it got to that, like, the guy looked like he was wearing like a parachute. I was like, what a dweeb. You went out of the house like that? Your parents should beat you severely. All right, enough. All right, so I did it. That was my thing with big pants. Number 2 in this week's episode, the second entry to the Hardcore Hall of Fame. In this installment, the stage diving superstar, or look at me, I'm part of the show. Whatever band it is featuring this guy. It's the spontaneous on-stage superstar, this stage diving superstar. You guys you must know what I'm talking about. Usually happens when somebody goes to one of their first, second, or third shows, stage dives, realizes early on, has this realization, oh my God, I'm allowed to stand on the stage. I'm allowed to jump off the stage, i.e., I'm part of the show. And I remember one particular guy, I'm going to use him as an example, but I've seen it like 1,000 times, and it's always some noob shows up, and they'll do this on stage. Like, they'll jump up to, like, I remember there was this one dude that came to a show with some of the people that I was like fringe going to shows with at the time. I knew him somehow, and I can't remember how. I think he was like a grunge dude. Like, he had like, the bangs that came down and like met at his mouth, like it was almost like a bowl haircut. He's a big pants, kind of big pants. He looked like one of Nelson Muntz's thug friends from The Simpsons that harassed Bart Simpson. What, dude? Like one of those guys. The one with the bangs. Not Nelson. Not the long-haired one. The one with the bangs. He looked like that. and he'd never listened to hardcore before. He was like he was like friends with like some drummer we knew, and he was like a metal guy or something. He had something to do with music, but he'd never heard of hardcore before. Somebody brought him to a show, and he stage dived, and people caught him, and so he immediately from there on in started coming to shows. He did it at that show too. He'd get up on stage and do like this big routine, like pointing to the audience, like me jumping, like put on this big show, like I'm gonna jump, me jumping, me gonna jump, and he'd jump off, come back up, stand there like next to the band, be patting the band on the shoulder, like pointing at them, giving them thumbs up and like that. Like he's part of the show. You get what I'm saying? I've seen this 1,000 times. Sometimes it's like some guy dancing on stage as though that's the pit. That's fun for a minute, but if I got to spend the show ducking spin kicks, I'm going to get annoyed. Like one of those people that, oh, look at me. It's like, Sick of It All featuring this guy in the crowd. He was one of those guys, and he started going to every show, didn't care what band it was. This was only for a few weeks, and I'm going to explain why it stopped, because that's hilarious, what happened to him. And he'd be one of those wicked jump on stage and do like the, I'm coming. He'd start pointing to the audience, like, going in there, ready? Start like, getting himself ready, like, I'm coming, I'm going to jump. Everyone's like, dude, go do whatever you want. Then he'd jump, come back out, jump back on stage again. Yeah, here I am. Stand there for a while. If the band guy went by, pat him on the shoulder, like point at him to the audience, like, yeah. Spontaneous hardcore superstar. So the last show I ever saw him at, he came up to me, or I saw him over at the side, like sitting down, and he had like a big black eye, and he had like blood trickling down his head. I'm like, you all right? What happened? You fall on your head? He's like, no, I was up on stage, and some big black guy beat me up. And I'm like, what big black guy? And I'm like looking around, and he points, and it was Mike. Anybody from Boston, rest in peace, Mike. It was Mike. It was at Sick of It All, and this dude was doing that stage superstar, putting on a big show. Here I am, gonna jump. I'm gonna run up and jump, and you're gonna catch me like flat. It was so embarrassing. And he said, yeah, I was just doing it, get ready to stage dive. The guy grabbed me, spun me around, elbowed me on the top of the head, and then threw me into the audience. And I was like, holy I'm like trying to hold back laughter. I'm like, oh man, that's up. And on a side note, Mike was one of the dudes that I always kept an eye on in the pit. Someday we'll get into the subject of dancing, hardcore dancing. And Mike was one of the ones that did it right, but he was one of the guys I always watched. When he started bobbing back and forth, you knew he was going to start throwing those 360 face-high spin kicks and that chop, which back then we didn't try to hide the chop, like do it politely to the guy next to us. People whipped it right into everybody's face. He was a crowd crusher. He would smash the crowd back like 9 feet when he slammed into the side of the pit. So I'm laughing my off. I saw video footage of it later, and I thought the kid was exaggerating. I thought he was trying to actually be funny. Like, yeah, he spun me around, elbowed me on the top of the head, and wedgied me off the stage. That's exactly what Mike did. I saw it on video. Somebody had like a camera phone video of it or something, like a camcorder, because this might even be almost before there were like camera phones everywhere. The kid was doing his, here I am. I'm going to run up. I'm going to jump onto you people. Here I am, featuring me. Jump on. Here I come. Coming. Mike grabbed him, spun him around. I saw it on video. It's hard to see, but it was at Axis. Sick of It All was playing Axis. Spun him around, elbowed him on the top of the head, grabbed a hem of his wedgie, and threw the guy off stage. That was the last show I ever saw him at. I could have kissed Mike for it. I didn't know him at that point. I only knew him as one of the, watch when he starts dancing, because if you're in the way, you're going to get your nose bloodied. He was one of those guys. There were a bunch. I'm not going to get on the subject of dancing, but that's the stage superstar, like the guy that the first time he gets on stage then starts making a habit of it. And all of a sudden, dig me, look at me, I'm up on stage, I'll pat the band, yeah. Ooh, yeah, right in the middle. All right, cool, you're welcome on stage. That's what hardcore's all about. Get up, do your thing. Get the out of the way, okay? Like, jump, stand, drink, sing along, do whatever you're going to do. But for the love of God, don't start breakdancing for everybody and putting a cup out for change. So that's the stage diving superstar. There's other examples I can think. Oh, I could think of another couple, but I don't. We'll hold it. And then the last one Dun dun, tension. Rob's hardcore strawman. Who was my hardcore strawman back at least in the late 90s, early aughts? The avatar that I would throw invective on as though he were there, as though this type of person. Well, it's a single person, I'll give you that hint. And but he was an avatar for everything that I've been talking about this entire episode. Who else could it be but Frederick Durst? I used to talk that guy, and he was such an easy target. But the thing was, you know, he was my straw man. I would just we sold so many of those Fred Durst shirts. I'm grateful the guy was alive. I actually may owe Fred an apology. He made it real easy to define to the audience exactly what we were about. The minute I launched into a screed about Limp Bizkit, specifically Fred Durst, because I was actually ambivalent to Limp Bizkit one way or the other. I mean, I didn't listen to it, but I didn't really care. It was him. That guy summed up in like one person everything I despised about the 90s and the early 2000s. He was like a sin eater of everything that made me sick, and I would just lay into him. But it was, like I said, we sold tons of those Fred Durst shirts, and he did sum up everything that I've been basically, pillorying throughout this episode and the previous one in one guy. And I'm gonna see if I can find it. It was an easy layup, but it immediately defined at that time when I would, Alice Cooper his head off on stage. People immediately knew, oh, I know what these guys are about. So it helped in that regard. And it wasn't actually that soft a target because we were one of the first people to actually start. This was at the height of their power that I was going after him on a regular basis. That dude was a power in the industry for a while, if you can believe that. He founded like Interscope Records or something. And they were the most popular band on earth at the time. So it wasn't that easy a target. It was just easy in that it was such an easy way to say, here's a lot of stuff that you're not going to find here at Blood for Blood Incorporated. And the other thing, if he was just some, which he was, I wouldn't have cared. But I'm going to see if I can find this. Give me a second. I'll scoop out some of this so you don't got to sit through it. He basically said something to the effect of, it's not that Fred Durst is a complete bozo, but though he is. If he basically said, look, I'm playing goofy music to make a bunch of money, get laid, and have a great time, I wouldn't have a problem in it. He's like, but this guy, this guy, when you hear him speak, that he thinks he's Bowie, David Bowie, and some kind of great artist because he stayed up all night writing a song called Break Stuff. That was Durst. He was so, anytime somebody took a shot at him, he would like weep. There were those, I remember, what was it, Blabbermouth, that had the recorded messages from him. They broke into his office, but they had all those messages from him screaming at him because they would make fun of him. So he was fun. He was, I almost wish he'd come back. I know he came back at the thing and he seemed like kind of reborn, and I'm with it. Hey, Fred, if you're going to be a new man, go for it. I wish you the best of luck. Everybody should have a chance to reinvent themselves or rebuild themselves or redefine themselves. I'll give him a shot. But he was my straw man and he was fun to beat on. All right, I'm going to jump now because this is already 4 times as long as I set out to do. But again, we'll do this again. We'll do some more Hall of Lame, baby. I will never run out of fodder for this particular topic. And we can always dig deeper into any of these topics. My love to you all. Go team, no head in the oven. See you later, guy. Lame. 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 Lame.